Okay, so I'm Joshua Lawrence with Lawrence Builders, and today we're here with Kimberly Dixon, and we're at her two properties on Lee Street, 5407 and 5403. And how about you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Kim Dixon Dudley, a residential broker and developer. I've been so excited to work with this guy. So finally got an opportunity to do, and we have two beautiful projects that I'm excited to talk about and share today.
So Kim, you talked about a lot of people that want to do the HGTV thing. They just want to be a builder, right? But there's a lot of things that go into that. So talk about the fundamentals of building.
So again, the HGTV effect. I cannot state it enough. You will not build and develop a home between the commercial breaks. But the fundamentals start with the pre-planning. That's really most important. The construction part, if you partner with someone like a Josh Lawrence and Lawrence Builders, that's the part that's seamless. You really need to dive in, make sure you know what your profits are, know your numbers, know what your projected exit out strategy is. So those are the three things that I would recommend for new developers or folks that are looking for residential construction.
Yeah, it's not like TV. It's totally different. It's more involved. You have to be on site. You have to answer questions that come up throughout the day. It's like, how do you build a house and not be able to solve things on the go? Just being able to go get materials and just keep the project going. So it's a lot of things that come up, and having the right people, right team together to navigate those things and keep it going.
Speaking of people, Kim, what's the importance of relationships when it comes to building a new construction house?
It's a long-term relationship, and people should be aware of that. So you got to like the person that you're working with. You got to trust the person. You have to understand and respect their level of how they work, and y'all be on the same page. For me, that's probably the biggest component in identifying a building partner, is knowing that, hey, we vibe. We have the same work ethic. I can trust that you're going to be on site and do the things that you're supposed to do, and I'm going to do the things that I do, and we're going to work together and make it a seamless process.
How can you take responsibility for your part in terms of, if you're working with the builder, how can someone take responsibility for what they need to do?
I think that going back to the pre-planning, knowing what your role is. I tend to try to jump in and do everything, right? But that's not my role. Josh is an expert. He understands the complexities of planning, permitting, all those things, and so you really have to define what your role is ahead of the project, and then stay in that range, stay in that space.
Yeah, Josh, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's all I do. I focus on what I know, what I'm good at, and all the other things I give it to someone else. So I'm good at building. That's what I want to focus on, keeping it on schedule, calling the right guys out, and being able to just take care of what I'm good at.
Kimberly, you said a lot of builders are skilled at the work, but not at the process. How important is understanding the difference between building and the process?
So that is one of the things that I really appreciate about working with Lawrence Builders, is that the build process is swinging a hammer, right? But the process of development is multi-layered. You're working with different municipalities like the city, the county, center point, utilities. But you have to be able to connect the dots with the process and the people that are involved, and then also know what the stages of construction are. And so Josh is super skilled at that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Josh, talk about some of the stages and processes people sometimes people look past or don't prioritize.
Yeah, so if you mess up in the beginning, it's like you mess up the whole project. So you want to just use these steps that I'm giving you guys to do a project, and don't skip and try to do something before getting to your final stage. So if
you have
just
an example of that, like somebody you've seen, just you don't have to name them, but like a situation where like somebody skip the process.
How much time you got, right?
Yeah, so painting before you get your trim and doors in. Why would you do that? Putting cabinets in before you, I don't know. It's just ordering materials ahead of time is another thing. So ordering your valves, ordering your finished materials ahead of time, so the guys, they can install it when we schedule those guys to come out. So they're not waiting and losing a week, losing 3-4 days just waiting on materials.
So what is the business of new construction, Kim? Can you answer that? Like, when instead of, a lot of people want to build a project from the ground up. That's like what they always say, right?
Yeah.
They want to build something, right? That's a dream, right? But what does the business side of that look like?
The business of new construction is really being a visionary. Like, you are doing so, you're changing the landscape of an entire city sometimes, right? Like right now we have a duplex phenomenon, and I want to talk to Josh about that. But Houston had not traditionally been set up, or not for the last 50 years, to build that type of product. So knowing the landscape that you're changing, knowing how that's going to impact the community around you, those are some key components that I think people need to really hone in on. And the business part of it is obviously the financing. We can talk about that and we can have a whole show about securing financing and the proper ways and routes to do that. But again, I think my philosophy is being able to connect the dots, and to Josh's point earlier, knowing what you do good and what other people do good, and then lean into your strengths.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that community piece, because I don't think I've heard people talk about that a lot. What does that look like to understand how you're changing your community?
Yeah, so for instance, I take on a project where I was putting 20 single family homes in a community that had not seen a contiguous track of development in over 50 years. You change the cycle of real estate. So now you have commercial real estate coming in and looking at these big swatches of developments. And you're also building in a neighborhood that has older homes. Some of the folks and residents are concerned about that driving up property values. Are you pushing them out? And the term that everybody's familiar with is gentrification. As a developer, you want to be responsible in knowing, hey, this is how I'm impacting this community. Also, I had a project where I went through and helped some of the seniors get their senior exemptions. You'll be surprised at some of the neighborhoods that you're building in. If the folks don't have the proper exemptions, they will be taxed out because the county doesn't know that they should have a senior or a disabled or a homestead exemption. It's also making sure we tie in the narrative for the entire community. Everybody knows that we're adding value. We think we're adding value, but the neighbors that you're building around, they need to know that you're adding value, and they need to know how they're going to be positively impacted. So it's all those pieces of the puzzle that matter, and then think about what this looks like 10, 20, 50 years from now. Are you adding value, or are you just taking away for your own individual
So Josh,
purposes?
talk about that. You said earlier you need to be around 50K to buy a lot, right? You can probably only buy a 50K lot in the hood probably, right? What does that look like to be able to build an affordable project in the area but also not harm the neighborhood?
Yeah, so when I'm going in, a lot of these lots are abandoned lots, trash, people not taking care of it. I want to go in and clean that area up and not just forget about the neighbors, the people beside me. So a lot of times I'm going out, introducing myself to the neighbors and just getting to know them and let them know what I'm about to do, and I'm not about to just ignore them while I'm building the product.
Yeah.
Is there any way y'all can think of, or that y'all have used before, to get people involved in a project? I know you talked about people with their value of their home or whatever. Is there any other ways that y'all have seen that done successfully?
So I would say, like, for one project, I did a pop-up movie where I invited the neighbors out to see what the new project is going to look like, have them ask questions directly. You're building in a community. Be mindful of that. If I could just say that to anybody, be mindful that you're building where people already live. So involve them in the process as much as you can, and then just be as transparent as possible.
Yeah, my way, I try to employ the people that's in their area, walking the streets that maybe can't get a job or just looking for a meal that day. So a lot of the guys I see, I'll get with them to see if they want to do some cleanup work or help with demo or anything to keep the area clean also. So just staying in contact with the neighbors.
And those will be the people that will watch your project too, right?
Yes, they're going to watch your project the most. They're going to know what's going on, what's getting stolen. Yeah, so be involved. Don't just go to the area and be a vulture.
Gotcha.
That's the word I was looking for.
I want to go back to the ACTV syndrome. Can we talk about how can you make the process fun, right? How can you still have creativity and actually build something? Talk about that a little bit.
So I'm going to go back to pre-planning. You plan it and you budget it and you partner with someone who's got a process like Josh. You can have fun in it. You can be creative. You can make changes in the process. And for instance, we didn't plan on putting a gate on this project, but we had budgeted so that the gate didn't take away. It was something we could say, oh, this is an added value. So if you pre-plan properly, the process itself won't be as painful, and then you can enjoy it.
And they were able to pick all their finishes, so they decided on colors, color scheme, flooring.
Oh, that's good.
I'm not good at that, so I don't want to be involved with that. I leave that up to them. They're good at making selections, and I'll use their finishes on my product on another one, maybe.
That's the HGT effect, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the fun part.